thinking, why don't you get us out of here? And I realized her take on it was, I got to make this work. I got to make this work at all costs. And we were very, like I said, you try to keep the secrets, and you try to not let anybody know what's going on. And especially, like I remember, people know, right? People know. I remember I was in middle school, which is like, it's not hard enough to be a middle schooler, right? It's a horrible time to be a human. And two of my not boyfriends, I didn't have two boyfriends, two of my guy friends, I might have, I don't know, but they came to the door, and my dad, it's 9 o'clock at night, it's in July, my dad apparently stumbled to the door, they asked, if I was home, and he, I guess, kind of slurred at him, and they knew he was drunk, and he said, no, she's at school. It's 9 o'clock in the evening in July. Like, clearly I'm not at school. And I just remember, like, the public pool was our spot, and going there the next day and just hearing the snickers, and, your dad was hammered, and, it was just like, and all that did was try to make me, try to do better, because if I do better, he'll quit drinking, and there was that whole cycle. And now, go ahead to the next slide. So I absolutely, Vega said this just a second ago, we can't stand the addiction. We love the addict, though. Okay, we love the person. We don't love the addiction, and we don't love the addictive behaviors. And my dad had, he had some doozies of addictive behaviors. But my dad, this is him. He passed away at the age of 70 as a product of, all he ate was junk food and smoked cigarettes and drank and then picked up some pain pills. So you don't live real long when that's the way that you live. But this guy was one of the smartest people I have ever known, one of the most charismatic people. He could walk into a room, and he would change the energy of the whole room. He was ornery. Like, he would tell a dirty joke to anybody. He was the one, like, if there was, like, somebody who seemed a little uptight, it was like my dad was like a heat-sinking missile, and he would go to that person, he would tell them, like, some sort of inappropriate joke, and next thing you know, that person was laughing, and he just had this, he had this amazing way about him. So as a person, my dad was the best. His addictive behaviors, that's what we couldn't stand. And that's one of the main things that I think people really need to understand, that addiction is a chronic, predictable brain disorder. And the symptoms of it are really bad behaviors. And people, we really need to educate the population, again, don't hate the addict, hate the addiction, hate the addictive behaviors. And that's part of what I am hoping to get into here with this talk tonight. But I do, before we move on, next slide, please, Vega. I just said, growing up in a house with addiction and woe is me and this and that. I don't feel that way at all. I had a great upbringing. And the challenges that I had absolutely made me who I am today. So I'm not standing up here trying to say, I had the worst childhood and feel bad for me, and none of that. I had a great childhood. Did it have some challenges? Yes, it did. But some of the things that came out of it, and I feel like, people in the audience, I don't know what everybody's background is, but you might look at this and say, well, some of those are negative, some of those are positive. You might recategorize them. But some of the negative skills, the guilt, the shame that you really carry with you, I just remember, and I still kind of feel this way, I never walk into a room that I really feel comfortable in. And I think that, I read my therapist, Doug, is here tonight, and he's fantastic. He's probably so mad at me right now for pointing him out, but we always did Zoom calls, so I'm meeting him for the first time tonight. And I asked him to be here because I'm sharing some of this personal stuff. But he gave me the book for adult children of alcoholics, and I read it, and I was like, oh my goodness, I could have used this like 4 decades ago. But one of the things that it mentioned in that book was walking into places and never really feel like you belong. And I can tell you, I've never walked into a room that I felt comfortable. I always feel like I have a secret. I have you just kind of carry that, I don't really belong here. Not sure where I belong, but I don't belong here. And that book really kind of got into that. If you haven't read that book and you are an adult child of addiction, I mean, it was life-changing for me. But The other things, codependency. I'm really good at codependency still today. I used to just, if my dad was in a good mood, we were in a good mood. When he was in a bad mood, we were in a bad mood. And I still find myself doing this, even like with my kids, in relationships. This is a hard thing to break. I'm working on it. Doug and I are working on it. But, that's one that's tough to break. And then, of course, one of the negatives is growing up in a household with substance abuse. You get exposed. I have the addictive genes. I grew up in a house where I was seeing that. And it's funny because I'm a biochemist, but I speak on neuroscience, and I'm very, very passionate about neuroscience. And I'm going to teach you all tonight the neuroscience of addiction. So you take all these things, and you're like, okay, good job. So you didn't fall to addiction. I did. So I am 7 months, 8 days without a drink. And I know. Yeah, I didn't, yeah, thank you. But, one day at a time. But I just looked down at my daughter, and she's like, But what I'm saying is, I don't have an excuse, right? I know better, and yet I ended up with my own drinking problem. So it's just a reminder. Addiction spares nobody, absolutely nobody. And, it's one of the things that once we go through this neuroscience, I hope everybody can be like, what's happening? Is there a tornado about to hit us? Is that what it is? Do we need to take action? Okay, but if it's a real, my daughter's saying, hit the down button, just make it go away. Is it a real warning? Do we need to be concerned? Okay, all right. Well, you don't know me well, but I never stop talking, so I'm just going to keep on going. The good things that came out of it, growing up in a house like that, I'm really good at gratitude. I got really good at saying, things aren't perfect here, but I got really good at figuring out what was going right. And I take that with me today. And the cool thing about neuroscience is you can't be grateful and anxious at the same time. It's actually impossible in your brain. So, gratitude was something I learned very young. I can read micro changes of energy of people around us. I can't tell if somebody's going to hit my car, but I can tell if your energy changes. And then I will get codependent to you, and I will try to figure out what I have done to make your energy change like that. Again, I'm not saying these are all good skills, but I gained them. Manifesting, I like to think I was manifesting long before it was cool. I didn't like my current situation, so I would start imagining different situations, and things really did work out for me. I had a lot of things go my way that probably shouldn't have. And I've made a lot of mistakes, and a lot of things haven't gone my way. But very young, I learned to get in my imagination. And from that, I had, a tremendous amount of positivity come my way. And that kind of goes along with fake it till you make it. When you're in a home of addiction, and you don't want anybody to know, you portray yourself differently. And it's one of those, act like the person you want to be until you become that person. And I learned that growing up in that home. And last but not least was self-reliance. I already told you my mom is the best. She was an amazing mother, and she did everything she could. But man, was she busy. She was trying to get the bills paid. My dad was a butcher, which I think is a very interesting choice for an alcoholic. And he, on many occasions, would cut himself open, literally cut his belly open one time. But the business didn't last long, okay? And she was the one who went out and found another job and figured it out. So she was busy. So when I say self-reliance, what I mean by that is, I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own, and that was great. That was absolutely a great thing to have happen. One more story about my dad, and then I'll stop, just to give you an idea of what a character he was. He was having a heart attack, and he knew he was having a heart attack because, like I said, he was a very, very smart guy. So he takes a half a bottle of baby aspirin because he's going to thin his blood, and he's going to self-medicate because, that's what he loved doing. And he realized that he wasn't beating the heart attack. So he finally goes to the emergency room, And he walks in and he says, "My name's Neil Garrison. I'm having a heart attack, but it's league night and I have a tea time, so let's get this moving." So he thought he was just going to go in and get like the drive-through service for his heart attack. He ended up in ICU and I think had quadruple bypass surgery after that. But just to give you an idea, like my dad, he was larger than life. He was such a character, such a character. Okay, Vega, go ahead and next slide, please. Okay, so why neuroscience? We're going to do something real quick. Everybody stand up. Okay, you're going to do something very uncomfortable, but I'm asking you to do it. Everybody smile. Okay, smile. We're going to smile and laugh fakely, okay, for 10 seconds. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Go ahead and sit down. So we just did a couple of brain things there, okay? Number 1, you sat too long. Your brain thought you were dying, okay? It's true. If you're somebody who works at a desk job and you're not standing up every 20 minutes, you're not getting maximum brain efficiency, okay? The second thing that we did, we activated the smile muscles. So what that told your brain is that something cool is happening, something good is happening, and so in your ventral tegmental area, all of your little dopaminergic neurons started shooting out dopamine. Did you do anything? You didn't get fed, you didn't get water, you didn't really get anything, but your brain was like, "Oh, good, we're happy. Okay, cool." And then you start laughing, and it reinforces that. So I just gave you all a hit of dopamine, okay? And this is the kind of stuff, the more you understand about the brain, the more you can hack your own brain, okay? Now, if you're a cocaine addict and you're used to that sort of dopamine, this wasn't going to do it, okay? But this is a great way to get a dopamine hit. So for me, why neuroscience? I have a biology degree, I have a chemistry degree. No, I don't think that's impressive, but I'm telling you because I love both of those sciences. And then I got my master's in biochemistry, which brought them both together. And everything that I had ever learned, now all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, this is the biology concept. Here's the chemistry. Cool, this makes sense now. And I took a class called Chemical Neuroscience. Still to this day, I wish I could go back and find the course content. It was so great, and it really changed my life. So neuroscience for me is really ingrained in my entire life. It's ingrained in my prayer life. It's ingrained in my work. My kids get sick of hearing about mindset. You know, I make them do like mindset training for sports. Because the reality is we have these beautiful brains, but they're actually stupid. So what you can do is use your thoughts to make your brains do certain things that will cause reactions in your body. So the more you know about it, the more you can use it. So that's for me, it's kind of like that's the why neuroscience, okay? Hopefully you'll learn something here. We'll get into the addiction stuff. Vega, next slide, please. So the first thing we have to realize, again, is that the brain is dumb. The brain believes anything you tell it. So if we go back in time, and this slide is kind of dark, but you see the little caveman on the bottom. So we have what's called a limbic system, which is composed of the midbrain. And the further a structure is, and I'm going to simplify a lot of things tonight. There's a lot of really intricate nuances to this, but for the sake of time, we're going to hit the big points. So the further a structure is to the inside of the brain, the more prehistoric it is. And what it means is it's composed, or it's worried about functions of survival. All right, so if you go into this particular system, we have the ventral tangential area. We also have in here the nucleus accumbens. Now, the prefrontal cortex is listed on this slide, but I want you to kind of forget about that one for now. So in this mesocorticolimbic dopamine reward pathway, which doesn't roll off the tongue, this is how your brain reacts to things that you do that further your survival. So back in the caveman days, he or she had to go out and hunt for food in a dangerous environment. So go out, get food, put yourself in possibly some danger for that. Your brain then says, okay, we're going to reward you with dopamine. And we're going to make a memory of this so that you'll keep doing it. Same thing with food, or same thing with water, same thing with mates. You know, we don't want the caveman mating with the other person in the cave because it's probably their, brother or sister. So they had to actually go out into a dangerous situation. So this reward pathway was born out of that to do things to keep you surviving, okay? Next slide, please. So keep that in mind. Dopamine, survival. Dopamine is meant to reward you for things that will help you survive. So now, let's go to substances. You go, I'm going to use a party for an example, but the truth is we all know gambling, video games, substances. So all of these things are going to trigger the same neurocircuitry in the brain. So I'm just going to generalize here. So let's say you go to a party. This is the first time using. Whatever substance it is, we'll say alcohol. You take the alcohol and you feel pretty good. You're like, wow, I've never felt this before. So you take more alcohol. And now you have even more of that feeling. What's happening in this particular case is you're getting huge amounts of dopamine. You're getting huge amounts of endorphins. And endorphins are the chemicals that basically mimic your own painkillers. We say runner's high. You get done running, and you feel this great euphoric feeling. That's the endorphins. Okay, so we're getting a little bit of both of these things. We're doing nothing to further our survival. This is like a cheat code. Okay, we're just jumping right to, give me the dopamine. I've done nothing to help me. All right? Next slide, please, Vega. We have a couple situations where in this party situation, we have different types of people. You have the person who goes in and says, hey, I like this. I feel good. This is cool, okay? They're feeling good. They're being positively reinforced. Not that they're not in danger of becoming an addict, but the negatively reinforced people have a much higher rate of addiction. And these are the people that might go into the same party, and maybe you're hampered with shyness. And now you've had a couple drinks, and you're cracking jokes, and people are laughing at you, and you're like, wow, this is great. Maybe you have pain, and you took a painkiller, and it took the pain away. So the negative reinforcers are when using a substance causes a negative side effect to go away. And these are the people who are more susceptible to addiction. Next slide, please. So what we've got going on, again, is we are having, in the ventral tegmental area, we're having huge amounts of dopamine released. Huge amounts going to the nucleus accumbens. And then we said earlier, hold on, I gotta see where I am on my slides. I'm trying to follow along too. Okay, Vega, go ahead to the next slide, please. So another part of this limbic system is the globus pallidus, and it has a really cool job of forming habits. So what it was there for was to tell the caveman, you went and you got food. We're glad that you did that. Here's the dopamine. We need you to keep doing this, so we're going to form this into a habit. And the globus pallidus is now lit up and doing its thing because, next slide, please, the reason the global pallidus is now able to make a habit out of this behavior that's truly not helping you at all is because the prefrontal cortex is being darkened. So the prefrontal cortex, this is your judgment. This is your decision-making. This is your higher order brain. This isn't part of that prehistoric limbic system. And I always like to give the analogy, there's a lamp. The lamp's giving off light. When you put a substance into your body and it floods you with this much dopamine, it's like putting a towel over the lamp. And the prefrontal cortex is that lamp supposed to shed light on the topic, okay? So now, prefrontal cortex is taking a break, which is allowing the globus pallidus to say, hey, let's make a whole bunch of habits out of this. Let's really like this. Let's associate this song with what we're doing. Let's associate this great feeling with what we're doing. Let's really pattern this in. And this is also the impulsivity. This is the part when the prefrontal cortex is darkened, just a little bit. This is when you meet somebody for the first time that night, and you're like, we should get tattoos of each other's names on our foreheads, and you're just like, this is the best idea that we've ever had. The reason you're able to get to that point is because your prefrontal cortex, it isn't functioning the way it should because there's too much dopamine. So your prefrontal cortex is also that part that, like, if you walk into Target and you're going for toilet paper and there's a 90-inch TV on sale and you're like, I should get that. Your prefrontal cortex is the part that's like, no, then we won't make rent, okay? But when you're on a substance of abuse or you just hit your first jackpot or you're playing a video game and you just killed the world, I don't even know what you do on video games, but whatever it is, it's that, okay? It's that overdone, heightened result. So the impulsivity is also, we describe this as beer goggles, all these things. But the reality is the prefrontal cortex isn't there to monitor. And so we have all kinds of things that start happening. And this is, again, I'm still at this moment talking just about first use. Next slide, please. So this is dopamine. If you're not familiar with dopamine, I would definitely get yourself familiar because you'll learn a lot about yourself and your brain. But dopamine's a neurotransmitter. And again, this is the one associated with happiness and euphoria, although that's debatable, but that's a bigger topic than today. Next slide, please, Vega. So real quick, if you'll just indulge me, this is probably maybe a little bit more science than you thought you were coming for today, but just go with me. So the brain and the nervous system are made up of cells called neurons, okay? So over here are the neurons, and the top of a neuron, these little spiky things are dendrites. Then you have the cell body, which has all the organelles, like the mitochondria and all that cool stuff you learned in biology class. But the axon is really the cool part of the neuron. And the axon is awesome. It has charged particles on the outside and charged particles on the inside called ions. And what will happen is those will trade places. And when these charged particles trade places, they create an electrical current. And then what happens, this allows the neurotransmitter to go in one side of the neuron and come down the axon. And this is called the synaptic cleft. This is what this is here, okay? And go to the next neuron. Your body is composed of tons of electrochemical gradients. This is what you run on. So we talk about homeostasis, and we say, homeostasis, you need to reach balance, okay? But if you actually reach complete balance, this would shut down all of your electrochemical gradients and you're dead. So we really, when we say homeostasis, yes, we do want to reach more of a balance, but these electrochemical gradients are what keep things going in your body. And so what we get is, we'll just stay with dopamine. Down here is the dopamine going from one neuron to the other in a synaptic cleft. A drug like cocaine, what cocaine will do, not only will it give a flood of dopamine, but it's also going to it's going to shut down the receptors. So it doesn't allow the dopamine to go to the next neuron. So now the dopamine is just flooding your system, and it doesn't get to move through the system the way it's supposed to. So all of these things that we're talking about, anything that's addictive, causes this huge rush of dopamine, and you're not getting anything to help the survival. So you're hijacking the brain. The brain is being hijacked, and it's being fooled. Remember, I said the brain is kind of dumb, and it can be fooled by these chemicals as well. So how much dopamine are we talking about? Vega, next slide, please. So on a good day, you wake up. A good day would be walking downstairs and my kids put the dishes in the dishwasher. I call that like the best day. I'm still waiting for it. But so good day. A good day, your dopamine in your system is about 50 nanograms per deciliter. All right? That's a good day. You're up, you're doing your thing. Your really good day, the really best day, you wake up, you're going to do your favorite thing with your favorite people, and they're buckets of money just sitting in your house, and you're like, oh, how did this all happen? Very best day is 100 nanograms per deciliter of dopamine. So now, if you eat your favorite foods, it's 94. Sex, 92. But your worst day, let's go to your worst day. The day where you wake up, you can't go to work, you are just down and out. You're calling in, you're like, I can't make it. That's 40. So what I want you to understand is the difference. I don't know if anybody loves logarithmic numbers, but the significance of the difference between 40 and 50. I know, you guys laughing. Everybody loves numbers that follow logarithmic values. But 40, you can't get out of bed. 50 is a decent day. That's not much different, right? So now let's talk about drugs. Let's talk about addictive substances. Let's talk about hitting a jackpot and gambling. Let's talk about whatever with video games. And I'm going to try because you guys laughed at me last time. So marijuana, cocaine, heroin, alcohol, opioids, they're going to secrete between 700 and 900 units of dopamine into your brain. You are not equipped. You are not equipped for that. And when that happens, again, that's when we're going to shut down the prefrontal cortex, but then the globus pallidus is over there going, hey, let's make this a habit. This is fantastic. Okay, so it hijacked all of those survival characteristics. And so now what's going to happen is your brain thinks, this is more important to your brain now than food. Again, with chronic use. More important than food, more important than water. Suddenly, you can't go to your kid's birthday party and have fun. That's not going to do it for you. That's not where you want to be dopaminergically. And so you've really, at this point, the brain is, out of sorts, I guess, is the best way to put it. But the problem is these pathways are being solidified more and more all the time. And we're going to talk about neuroplasticity in a second. But this is this is the first stage. This is just what's happening in the first stage, okay? And I'm going to guess that a lot of us in here have used at least one addictive substance or gambled or, the addiction to phones. They're really looking into that now, too, the feeling that you're drawn to your phone, that you have to go back to your phone for those dopamine hits. Just looking at a couple people. So just in stage one, you've already taken the chemistry of your brain and messed it up. You have taken the circuitry in your brain and started to rewire it, okay? So before we go to stage two, stand up again because we're dying. You didn't know you were getting a workout tank. Raise your hands. Okay, so I'm gonna do something. I need you to just stand there, and I want you to clear your mind. And I'm going to send you a message, okay? So everybody just clear your mind. Okay, now, I'm going to give you some math problems. Do them in your head. Don't say them out loud. Everything I ask you, just answer in your head, okay? 1 + 1. Of course, it's one of my kids. 2 + 2. 4 + 4. 8 + 8. Think of a vegetable. Okay, so on the count of 3, I want you to say your vegetable. 1, 2, 3. Carrot. Hey, it worked. Go ahead and sit down. Oh my gosh, we're so telepathic. All right, so for the first time all night, my kids are interested. They're like, no, I didn't do anything special there. It's just the most common vegetable. And there's also like a neat little study out there that says that people are always thinking about sex, and it's somewhat of a phallic symbol, and so that's why people think of it. So you're all dirty-minded is what you are. But anyway, stage 2. Let's get into stage 2. This is where, Vega, go ahead to the next slide, please. So stage 2, this is your withdrawal and negative affect. This is going to be more pronounced with chronic use. And what's going to happen here is now we're going to pull in a different chemical. The amygdala is going to get involved, and the amygdala had a really good purpose for survival. The amygdala is what will warn you if you're walking down a path and there's a snake. Your amygdala will actually sense that danger before your conscious mind will. And your amygdala is part of that fight or flight. Next slide, please, Vega. We didn't do the amygdala yet. Nobody cares, but let's just show that slide. There it is. Again, we're back in the midbrain, so we're back in that more primitive part of your brain. But the amygdala likes to give us a little bit of stress, and we should, in some cases, have stress. The caveman needed stress. Now, today, we're all stressed out. We all have all this anxiety. And go ahead to the next slide, Vega. And what we're secreting in massive doses is cortisol. So we had dopamine and endorphins over here that were like, hey, we make you happy. Cortisol makes you stressed. Most of the stress that we as humans have today is unnecessary. Most of the stuff that we're stressing about, we have zero control over. Most of the stuff we're stressing about will never happen. We will come up with things in our minds, crazy stories in our minds. Those things probably won't happen. I'm not saying don't ever get stressed out. I'm just saying the next time you're stressed, if you're sitting in traffic, one of the big things that I like to get across with this is, our lives are in our minds. Our lives, your life, we all have things. We all have people in our lives. We have all these things. But really, the only thing we actually have is the present moment in our head. Like 1 minute ago, that's gone. 1 minute from now didn't get here yet. All you have is this moment. This is your life. So you're going to decide what you're putting in your head at this moment. And things out there aren't good or bad. You decide. It's the thoughts you put to something that are going to determine whether you decide it's good or bad. So, for example, you're sitting in traffic, and you're like, this is the worst. I'm so unhappy. I can't believe this is happening. I mean, really, you can choose to sit there and do that. Sure. You're not going to make the traffic clear up. Secreting cortisol, that's what's going to happen. The amygdala is going to say, okay, we're upset. Let's secrete cortisol. Cortisol is going to work to break down all of the functions in our body. Extreme amounts of cortisol will do nothing but tear your systems down. So if you're sitting in that traffic and you just want to sit there and perseverate over how bad this stinks and assign it as a terrible thing, that's your moment, that's your life. And so one of the things I encourage you to do with a new understanding of neuroscience is every situation you're in that is bad, take another look at it. I mean, is it that bad? And if you do decide, okay, this is a negative situation, is there anything you can do about it? Because most of the time there won't be. So like, for example, if you ever get a phone call from me, I'm probably in my car and I'm probably in traffic. That's when I talk. My brother and I can't remember the last time we spoke that one of us wasn't in our car sitting in traffic or something. That's what I do. If I'm in traffic, it's like, well, okay, nothing I can do about this. I'm not going to move the traffic, but I can make a phone call. I can reach out to have a connection with somebody. I can make the best of this situation. Because what I don't want to do is sit there and secrete cortisol. And that's what you'll do when you sit in a negative energy and put stress on yourself over something that you don't have any control over. I didn't mean to go on that tangent, but cortisol is bad, okay? We need it for certain things, but in the large quantities that we secrete it in our bodies, it's bad. And when we're in this situation and the person is not using, this is what the brain will secrete. And remember, we have created in our brain a habit now that says, okay, we can fix this. It's not going to tell us to go get food. It's not going to tell us to go get water. The only way the brain sees to fix this is what the globus pallidus has put in there as that habit, and that is the substance of choice. And this can become, go ahead to the next slide, Vega, please. This is where we get into trouble, because the brain starts to see an out, and the only out that it sees is substance of choice. I love all the people in my life. They're fantastic. But I do hear a lot of people who say, I have so much anxiety, and the only way I can get rid of my anxiety is to just have a glass of wine. And by the way, when I say people, this was also me, okay? And I talk to, people who, I just need to take the edge off. The anxiety that you have if you're using a substance that puts your dopamine this high, most of your anxiety is not coming from whatever's going on in your life. Most likely, your anxiety is coming from this withdrawal and effect from the high dopamine, and now your body says, okay, we got to even this out. So here's your cortisol, and now you're stressed. And what do you need? To use. And if you use, you'll feel better, right? No, you'll get to the point where you're just getting back to, you're not going to feel high. You're going to get back to even level ground. So you can see where this is happening. The brain's been hijacked. The prehistoric part of the brain is in control, and it has determined that what it needs is a substance of choice. So this is really cool. There's a woman, Ann Lemke from Stanford, and she wrote a book called Dopamine Nation, and she talks about how the pleasure and the pain center are in the same part of the brain. And whenever you feel a tremendous amount of pleasure, in order to reach homeostasis, your brain is going to secrete the pain chemicals to try to even that out, okay? You can't stay over here high. Your body isn't going to let it happen. So then what happens is the pain, the cortisol, all of this comes up to get you to try to get back to level playing ground. And that's, again, that withdrawal that you're feeling, all right? But one of the things that I learned from her that I think, I get it, I understand it evolutionarily speaking, but when the scale tips, so the dopamine takes you up here, okay? And then the cortisol comes up to even you back out. Your body will always err on the side of pain. You're never going to win on the side of pleasure. This is like super depressing. You're all like, why did I come here? It's terrible. But the reason it is that way, though, is your body, remember, has to make you uncomfortable, so you'll go out and find food and water and things like that. So you have to get hungry so you know to go eat. So we can't err on the side of pleasure. We err on the side of pain. And again, they're regulating the same area of the brain, which was a really cool discovery to come out of neuroscience. Okay, next slide, please. So stage 3. Here we are, last stage of addiction. I would say for most people, whether you're the addict, whether you have the addict in your life, this is probably the phase where you noticed that something wasn't right. This is the part where the brain goes into survival mode. And because we've hijacked the equipment, the only solution that your brain sees, your brain will think that you're actually dying, and the only thing it thinks it can use to get better is the substance of choice. If you look up here, go ahead to the next slide, please. This is the part where you haven't used, you had the withdrawal. This is the anticipation, the craving, and the closer that you get to a substance, the less resistance that you have to withstand, to stay off, which is another interest. There's so many cool experiments out there. There's so much great research. I know you guys are like, okay, wrap it up. But like, I could do this for hours. There's so much good stuff out there. But if you get into that decision fatigue as associated with addiction, it's really fascinating. But if you look here, this is our prefrontal cortex in the front of the brain. At this stage of chronic use, at this stage of withdrawal, and now craving and anticipation, we said before we were going to put towel on the prefrontal cortex as if it was a lamp. So now this is like grandma's quilt. It's gone, okay? There is nothing in the prefrontal cortex that is driving, this ship, steering this ship. And so all that is in charge at this point is the limbic system. And this was, for me, understanding this more was like, oh, that's why my dad acted the way he did. It wasn't because I got a B on a test. It's because his brain, he had a chronic, predictable brain disorder. And they can do scans to show this. This is not something, where, and this is why, like, with the stigma of addiction, it really gets to me, because if somebody walked into an emergency room with an overdose, and somebody else walks into an emergency room having a heart attack, the overdose victim is going to get treatment to get them out of that acute state, and they're gone 30 minutes later. The heart victim is going to have tests run and all kinds of things. And for this guy or girl over here, they are now, their dopamine level, we talked earlier, what was a bad day? Do you remember? 40. The average addict in this phase can get down to 10. So we're saying good day 50, 40 can't get out of bed, 10. This person is not equipped to make decisions that are best for them. This person is not ready for treatment at this point. They need to be chemically, and there are drugs to do this. And this is kind of, I'm getting on my soapbox here a little bit, but I just feel like the treatment for addicts, we all say the stigma, and let's get rid of the stigma. The drugs for addiction have a much higher cure rate than the drugs for diabetes. I'm not making this up. You can look it up. So again, a talk for another night. But it really comes down to this dopamine. You're not giving the addict dopamine to get them high. They need enough dopamine to get to the point where they can start to rebuild themselves and they can start to work on their brains. So when we get to this point, Vega, go past the next one. I have a slide on the, oh, that's good. Were we on the, okay. So what these fireworks are here is this is just showing that the brain has now developed these pathways. They are solidified. The brain is neuroplastic. It has neural circuitry in it that I always liken to sled pathways. Vega, if you can go to the next slide, please. So you have these sled pathways, and just like when you get to the hill to start sledding, whatever you're telling your mind right now, maybe you're telling your mind you need to lose weight. Maybe you're telling your mind you're a loser. Maybe you're telling your mind, I don't know what your internal dialogue is, but whatever it is, your brain is responding by making neuroplastic circuits to support that. And your brain collects data all the time. So what will happen is the brain will collect data based on what you're thinking about. So if you're thinking that you're a loser, like, man, I'm such a loser, your brain will collect data to support that. And in your life, you'll look around, you'll start to see things that support that, okay? Because now that's what your brain is keyed into. And so with the addict, these patterns at this point are so deep, these sled trails are so deep, and they're so encrypted, if you will. And they can change. These sled pathways can change. I don't want to be all doom and gloom here. And go to the next slide, please. Neuroplasticity, if anybody knows me, and I do have a lot of friends here tonight, I love neuroplasticity. I talk about it all the time. I feel like not enough people know about it. And what this means is your brain is able to change. So the whole can't teach old dogs new tricks is actually completely false. But you have to be cognizant of what you're thinking, which sounds really funny, right? But it's true. You have to watch what you're thinking because that's what your brain is going to collect data on. And again, when we go in this addict's brain, this brain disorder, the problem is that the pathways at this point are prehistoric and they're pointing to substance, okay? So neuroplasticity, though, is honestly the greatest gift that we have. And I love it, and I'm working on it all the time, and especially since I've quit drinking. It's funny, though. It's funny, like even getting ready to come here tonight, I get a craving when I'm getting a shower to go somewhere fun. Because when I was drinking, my girlfriends are laughing, because you girls all do this, and I don't even want to hear it. I loved having a glass of champagne while I would get ready to go somewhere. And when I quit drinking, I was like, I just kind of be in my bathroom, like, welp. But I started, I'll put, Sprite in a wine glass, and, I do all kinds of weird things. But it was so weird tonight, coming here to talk to you guys about addiction. And it's funny how I know my brain is changing. I know I'm creating new sled pathways. But when you make these pathways, your brain is really great at saying, let's keep all those cues. Let's keep all those memories. She likes that song, and she remembers dancing with the girlfriends to that song, and they were hammered, and, your brain keeps all that, and it takes a really long time. And they've done brain scans of people who've been sober for 2 years, and they can still see the areas of craving light up when they say to them in a functional MRI, talk about your substance of choice. So yes, we can rewire our brains. It does take time, and it does take an actual, you have to work at it. You really do. Next slide, please. I don't even know what's on here. Oh, the hippocampus, that's just part of your memory. So, at this point in the addiction process for that person, the memories are just absolutely ingrained there. Like I was just saying, even tonight I was thinking about, drinking. Next slide. So what we need, the last part of this, Actually, go to the Nancy Reagan slide, please. Y'all remember Nancy? Okay, so if you remember this is what we were given. So to my children, this is what we were given. Nancy Reagan told us to just say no. There was a commercial that ran all the time with an egg, and they would say, "This is your brain." And then they'd drop the egg in the frying pan, and they'd say, "This is your brain on drugs." I mean, it actually wasn't a bad analogy, because that neuroplasticity of the brain, it did change. But, this was the tool we were given. I would like, especially with having some teenagers here in the room, go to the brains. There's a slide with some brains. Let's take a look here. These are brain scans aging 5 to 20. And the purple regions are we'll call them the fully cooked versions, okay? So as time goes by, we're getting more fully cooked. But, kids will say, "Why do you have to be 21 to drink? Your brain's not done." And the problem that we have with addiction is most people who end up with a problem, most people used before their brain was cooked. Most people used, I think I had my first drink at like 12, something like that. Oh, Mom. My mom's here. She goes, now that was just like, actually it was younger than that, because Brooke and I used to, my brother and I used to sip on Dad's beer. There's like cigarette ashes in it. It's just nasty. But the point is, most people will try a substance before their brains are done. And remember, we said it's one use, and you already start making new SLED pathways. So to me, Nancy Reagan was great, and I know she tried hard, but to me, I feel like the teenagers need to understand that your brain, they need to understand that if you use before your brain is done, or again, let's not any of us use any addictive substances. If you don't, then you get to be happy from normal things. You get to look at a flower and be just totally like, wow, that is a beautiful flower. What a beautiful color. When you use substances and you have these high dopamine kicks, you lose the happiness in the little things. And I feel like kids are so smart these days. I feel like if we could explain that to them, it might really make a difference. I'm also a very positive person. As I'm saying this out loud, I'm like, these kids don't want to hear this. But ideally, if we could educate the teenagers and keep them from using before they get fully cooked, before their brains are fully done, it would make a difference. And as we wrap this up, go to the slide, please, the neuropsycho endocrino-immunology. Another one that just rolls off the tongue. This is a super cool field. I love this field. This is where psychology is coming together with neuroscience, coming together with the endocrinologists, who are the hormones, looking at the hormones that regulate body systems, and the immune system. And we're starting to look, and we're reminding ourselves that what you're thinking. Earlier today, remember, we smiled and fake laughed, and we caused a reaction in our body. So anybody who says there's no mind-body reaction, that's garbage. If you're watching a sad movie, that can cause a physical reaction in your body. And this study, this field of study is really trying to join all that together and really looking at patients after they've had surgery and their healing and how they can use mindset to heal faster. So super, super fascinating field. Vega, go to the final slide, please. As if you haven't seen this enough. I put this picture in here, and I say this every time I talk, but do you remember these sleds? And did you remember that no matter how you go down the hill, it will always run over your face? It shouldn't, and the laws of physics say that it wouldn't, but I know, my brother and I just destroyed ourselves on these runner sleds. I hope they're not around anymore. But let's wrap this up with a few tangible things that I think everybody can take away from this. A reminder that your brain is plastic, it's malleable. You can control the circuits in your brain. Right now, tonight, start minding your thoughts. Start taking inventory of how you're thinking and what you're saying to your brain, because your brain is dumb and your brain is listening, and if you say something to your brain's like, okay, let me figure out what to do, and I'll secrete the appropriate chemicals. Let's also with the whole neuroplasticity thing. Let's start doing things that secrete dopamine naturally. Vega, go to the next slide, please. You know, I have on the, I think I put this, yeah, this, not that. So like when you go to speak to your brain, I don't think to myself every day, don't drink, don't drink, don't drink. I don't think that. I think being sober is awesome. Being sober feels good. I don't like to put the word drink, 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 drink in my mind, because then my mind's like, wait, what aren't we supposed to do? What are we thinking about? But if you rephrase it, it's just like a pilot. You don't say to a pilot, don't hit the mountain, because then they're going to hit the mountain. That's what they're focused on. You say fly up. So in your mind, start thinking of your, saying things the way that will benefit your brain. Again, focusing on what you want, not giving your brain language that you don't want. The next thing here, the morning routine. I wake up every morning and I will sit up and I'll smile, and I'll smile for an uncomfortable amount of time, and I will say to myself, today is going to be a great day. And right away, I have tricked my brain. And, maybe it's going to be a great day, maybe it isn't. Those of you who know me, I'm very positive. I'm writing a book right now called Delusional Positivity, using neuroscience to get the best out of life. But it's true. You can smile, and if you say it's going to be a great day, your brain's like, hey, it's going to be a great day. Let's look for data. Let's collect data to support that. And then you go through your day, and you're like, oh, wow, look, today is a great day. This just happened. Okay? If you wake up and say, boy, I hope today doesn't suck, that's what your brain will look for data to support. The next thing is compliments. This is a nice little dopamine hack that is so easy and it's so lovely. I don't hold anything good in anymore. If I am checking out, like I like nails. I don't do fancy nails, but I like fancy nails. So if I'm checking out and the girl checking me out or something has cool nails, like I always compliment. I throw out as many compliments as I can, and it's really selfish though, because people always respond so nicely, and then I feel good. So it's a dopamine hit because I feel like I might have brightened somebody's day. It's a dopamine hit because they in turn brighten my day when I see that it was well received. And I have yet to give someone a compliment that was grumpy with me, so this one works. Use your imagination more. If there's something you want in your life right now, if there's something you're working towards, you really have to think about it using all senses. You have to get the brain firing in all senses, and you have to really think about what it would feel like to have that. And this is where I get into like prayer mindset. Some people call it manifesting. I don't care what you want to call it. Your brain will do it. And then, like I said, your brain will start to collect data to support whatever that is that you're focused on. Thought inventory. Like I said, keep an eye from here on this point forward. You've been here. You've heard this. You don't have any excuses. From here on out, stop and really pay attention to how you're thinking, what you're thinking, and what you're telling your brain. That for me has made a huge difference. I'm not happy all the time. My life is not perfect. I've done horrible things, made horrible mistakes, all that. But I'm happy. And I'm happy because of some of these changes that I've made. Gratitude overload. You can't be grateful and anxious at the same time. The next time you are out and about and you're feeling anxiety, first of all, figure out, does this anxiety even make sense? Probably doesn't. And in that moment, start thinking about things you're grateful for. I always go straight to, like my kids. The first thing I'll think is, man, I'm so glad I have my kids. And then whatever I was anxious about will, again, there's a place for anxiety. But in our society today, anxiety was meant for going and hunting and gathering food. We have Uber Eats, all right? Ann Lemke, and the woman from Stanford, she talks a lot about how a lot of people fall into addiction because their brains really need something more thrilling. And in our current society, we got it easy. The basic survival needs are met. So we're kind of sitting around like you could be in your house and not have to leave for a week. You'll get everything you need. You can get it from your phone. And then the last thing is emotional regulation. This is something I'm working really hard on. And this is where when something happens in your life, try to get back to stationary as fast as possible. It doesn't mean don't get mad. Yeah, I got mad this weekend, and I had to catch myself and be like, what am I really mad about? Is this really like where I want to go with this energy? And of course it wasn't something I needed to be mad about, but emotional regulation is not letting yourself get too high, which sounds bad, but again, not putting the substances, but also when you're low, don't spend too much time there. Really try to detach. I shouldn't say detach. That's a bad therapy word. But try to emotionally regulate as much as possible. Try as much as possible to retain that middle ground. Again, not that we don't want to be happy. We do. But emotional regulation, if you look that up and do some reading on it, because it's a fascinating field and it's great. And, as we close here, this is, like I said, you can tell I like talking about neuroscience. I have so many words. So this was a topic that I like to talk about, but this tonight was a unique experience for me. I've never spoken, about my family and the addiction in my family. I'm recently sober. I'm new here, and I've never really talked about that. And this has been an honor and a privilege to be here tonight. And the last thing that I would leave you with is just a reminder that, we are in our mind. We are the present moment in our thoughts. That is your life. Oh, last slide, Vega. So again, just to leave you with this, 1 minute ago is gone. It's the past. 1 minute from now isn't here yet. All you have literally is this moment. This moment is your life, so make it glorious. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we really appreciate that. Come on up, Becca. Here. I'm just going to pass this right over.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill. That was awesome. I just want to point out that she had this slide up there, and I know you had to cut a few things out. Yeah, but I wanted to go over it. But this is a Bible verse from Philippians. It says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." And this goes hand in hand with what Jillian was talking about, how there's actually a lot of data, like in the Bible and in the scripture, which was written thousands of years ago, that science is just now barely catching up to. So I just think that is so fascinating. What this verse is saying is what you were saying in the beginning of the talk, where you cannot feel anxiety and gratitude at the same time, correct? Shake your head to me so I know that I'm on the right track. So I just think that that's fascinating. So like in the Bible, in the scripture, all words in the Bible are true. So like God's already instructed us and told us that, look, the answer to anxiety is to just switch your mindset over to gratitude. And I just think that that is so cool, how you can intertwine science and faith and really look at it as one journey. I know the story for Tony and I, it really wasn't until we developed a personal relationship with the Lord that we found true healing and true peace and true restoration between our lives and our hearts. Just, anxiety comes with a lot of brokenness. It really does. The last study I read was 1 in 10 individuals struggle with addiction, but 1 in 3 households struggle with addiction. That's literally everybody. I'm sure every person sitting in this room knows a person that struggles with addiction. So it's a very common, and it's something that has no prejudice. It doesn't care what you look like, what your socioeconomics is, and it could take you down, and it can take you down quick. So I just wanted to share that part of our journey because everyone here, I want you to hear that God loves you. each and every one of you. He knows you by name, and he meets you where you're at. So no matter where you're at in your journey, in your faith, like just know that there's a God out there that loves you, and he'll meet with you. And just picture that sled that we saw 4 times up there. It's the same way. Your relationship with God is the same way with that sled. Like, just the more you pray, the more you talk to him, just the deeper that sled pathway is going to deepen and develop. And that's really just the best advice that I could maybe give to you, just to wrap this whole thing up. Tony, anything else? Just thank you.
Yeah, just thank you again, and remind everyone we meet here every Wednesday night at 6:30 to eat. Meeting starts at 7. Thank you so much.
And Jillian will stick around for questions if you have any. You'll stick around for questions if anyone has any. Thank you, guys. Please grab cookies and chips on the way out if you want.
I was trying to wrap around. I was like, yes.